بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله حمد الشاكرين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu to another episode of questions and answers. Today's subject, of course, as we have a theme with every Q&A session, today's theme is UK riots, racism and radicalization in Britain today. There was, of course, riots last week within the UK, but through international media, if someone was observing those riots on international media, they would make more of those riots than what was actually occurring on the ground. With regard to the riots were spurred on by false news. There was false news with regard to the murder of young innocent girls that were murdered in Southport, and as a result of those rumors, people took advantage of those false rumors that the murderer was actually a Muslim, which he was not, that he was an illegal immigrant, which he was not. And then they rioted outside a masjid, and many of those rioters were arrested, and almost 600 people have been arrested across the UK, and 150 have been charged up until now. And those riots were spurred by false rumors, by irresponsible individuals, the likes of Nigel Farage, irresponsible for spreading false information, as well as Tommy Robinson, who happens to be abroad at this time, who is not in the country at the moment, but the police body cams demonstrated that those who were rioting were white Englishmen attacking the police viciously and injuring many police officers. And this comes post the Manchester airport incident, where a young Pakistani man had a fight with police officers. Those same extremist right-wing, far-right individuals who criticized that young man at the airport for assaulting police officers were the same people then that broke public property, damaged public property, harmed police officers, cast stones, bins, whatever they were able to carry and cast and throw at the police, they did so. So these riots were a blemish upon this country, were a blemish upon the majority of the people of this country. But the rhetoric of the far right, the racist and radical rhetoric of the far right, is what we will be covering today. Today we will be covering some of the rhetoric and responding to some of the rhetoric and the radicalization that is occurring at the hands of the far right, where they may misguide some of the youth into thinking that Islam is a threat or Muslims are a threat, and misinforming people, giving disinformation with regard to Islam. Before I do that, we will be taking some of your questions. I will be taking some of your questions and responding to your questions, and then we will be looking at other issues also, like Hugh Edwards. Why was the issue of Hugh Edwards in the BBC ignored during the week? Why was that not covered extensively as it should have been? So, as we will be discussing later, Elon Musk and Andrew Tate, the imbecile Elon Musk, the comments he made with regard to Britain being at civil war, someone commenting from abroad, not knowing the real situation on the ground. Elon Musk is living in an abstract world on the World Wide Web. He's not living in the real world. Like he switched suddenly when it came to the war in Gaza. At one point, he supplied the people of Gaza with internet connection, for which he was praised. And the next time, he went to occupied Palestine and supported the occupation in Palestine. Someone asks the question, Salam Shaykh, is it haram to make mobile game apps? That actually depends on what you have on those apps. It depends totally on the content of the applications that you invent. Someone asks the question, Assalamu alaikum Shaykh, is being a bouncer at an establishment which sells alcohol and various other prohibited activities halal? The answer would be no, it would not be halal. Someone asks the question, do you think it's a coincidence that Anjum Chaudhry was sentenced the same time the riots took place? Anjum Chaudhry was actually arrested way before the riots had taken place. The trial and the sentencing occurred around that time. Why don't UK Muslims make a council across UK who can answer these people who have misconceptions of Islam? Well, that should be an initiative set up by all the influential Muslims. That should be set up by all the influential Muslims. And with regard to that, it's an initiative for every influential Muslim to come together on this point to set up a board of ulama and du'at, callers to Islam, that respond to false information, disinformation regarding al-Islam. Assalamu alaikum. Do you need wudu to perform sajda to shukr? The answer is no. To perform sajda to shukr, which is prostration out of thankfulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you do not actually need wudu. Someone asks, I have seen some claims that Al-Imam Al-Juwayni criticized Al-Imam Abu Hanifa, stating that he didn't know Arabic and was a weak narrator. In Al-Burhan fi Usul al-Fiqh, are these statements correct and authentic? The answer is no, they are not authentic. Al-Imam Al-Juwayni rahimahullah would not utter such statements regarding Al-Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Someone asks, what's the role and purpose of the two hidden prophets, Nabiullah Ilyas and Khidr alayhim salam? Do they have a specific task linked to Al-Imam al-Mahdi or the Great War or the War of Al-Hind? The answer is, with regard to Khidr alayhi salam, there is an actual dispute, even though this is ijma' of the Sufi ulama. And the likes of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, they actually met Khidr alayhi salam. There is a hadith in the Sahih of Al-Imam Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala relating to Ad-Dajjal, where the sub-narrator states that the young man that will be killed by Ad-Dajjal, and then after Ad-Dajjal has split this young man in two, he will join the body again. This young man, it is claimed by the sub-narrators, which is some of the tabi'een or atba'u tabi'een, the successors, is Khidr alayhi salam. So that's the opinion of some of the ulama of the hadith scholars, that Khidr alayhi salam will identify Ad-Dajjal as being the false Messiah. That will occur in the area known as Al-Jurf. Al-Jurf is that region near the Mount Uhud. Near Mount Uhud, there is an area known as Jurf, and near the salt marsh, that is where Ad-Dajjal will be identified as a liar by Sayyidina Khidr alayhi salam. Someone asks, Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Asrar, Rashid, I'm a big fan. I have a question. You challenged the Shias, then you did not debate. What happened? That is not true. The Shia turned up at the masjid. They agreed to debate. They would not even name their debater. And then they held a conference claiming that I did not turn up at the debate. So it's a false propaganda that they actually put up. That was 8 years ago. Sheikh, what can I say to my friend who says he has no ijazah to attend events other than those of his sheikh? Well, our manhaj is that people should attend the events of Sunni ulama in general, take benefit from all Sunni ulama. خذ ما صفى ودع ما كدر. Take what is pure and leave what is tainted. Sheikh, why was the adhan banned in the UK? The adhan is not banned in the UK actually. We have in the UK laws relating to noise pollution. So public buildings, irrelevant to what building, they cannot play sounds according to the local council's restrictions on loudspeakers. So technically there is no ban on the adhan. There are some mosques which actually do have loud adhan. But there are restrictions from the council, guidelines, which prohibit loud sounds from public buildings. Someone asks, isn't Khidr alayhi salam being still alive some groovy Sufi stuff? The answer is no. It's a position of some of the mainstream ulama, like Al-Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah. In fact, Abdul Rahman bin al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, the Baghdadian scholar, he wrote 2 books, one in favor of Khidr alayhi salam being alive, one refuting the same position. So it is actually an issue of dispute amongst the ulama. Someone asks, Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh, how many hours should I be studying and how many books do you study at one time? This varies from person to person and capability. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created different capability within different people. Someone asks, Sheikh, should we live off grid in Akhiru Zaman in the mountains with our sheep where it rains? The answer is, if you are able to purchase farmland in this day and age, farm the land, live off the land, then that is recommended according to the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Therefore, living off the grid in terms of living on farmland is something absolutely recommended. Aqib asks, you want us to reject evolution but accept magic? Well, Aqib, evolution as a scientific theory is not something that I have advocated for you to reject. But what I have mentioned is that Darwinian evolution, in terms of two aspects. One is, what grading of certainty do we give to the theory of evolution? We would say that when we grade things with certainty, does it fall under absolute certainty? And the answer is no. Of course, there is current near consensus amongst the scientific community with regard to, in terms of falsifiability, Darwinian evolution theory being the best prospective and best model for biological evolution. But what grading of certainty do we posit for Darwinian evolution? That is something for you to think about. And then, with regard to human origins, why would we reject that which we know through absolute certainty, which is the divine intervention and the divine creation of Adam alayhi salam? Why would we apply something which does not reach absolute certainty? Why would we reinterpret the Quran in accordance with the scientific theory that eventually will undergo change? As Richard Dawkins mentions in The Devil's Chaplain, that from 100 years from now, the evolution theory will be totally unrecognizable, because that is the nature of science. That science develops over time incrementally, and a scientific theory will undergo change and shift over time. So anything that is prone to shifting over time cannot reinterpret that which in the Quran is known by absolute certainty, which is divine intervention and divine creation of the Anbiya of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. Someone asks, can you do a video about objections to Sunni beliefs such as tawassul through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam being alive, Hazir, Nazir, etc., and the dalil for these beliefs? There are already on my channel videos which cover at-tawassul and Hayatul Anbiya, but insha'Allah ta'ala in a future questions and answers, we will have a themed questions and answers including al-asma' wa sifat and the hayatul anbiya fi quburihim, as well as the other beliefs pertaining to anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam. Someone asks, Assalamu alaikum, how do we explain abrogation? Abrogation and nasakh relates only to ahkam, rulings. It does not relate to qasas, stories of the Quran. It does not relate to the akhbarul Quran, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us with regard to in the past or the future. And nasakh does not relate to aqidah. It only relates to ahkam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may abrogate a legal ruling for the believers at a particular point of the revelation of Al-Quran Al-Kareem. Someone asks, Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Asrar, did a Sayyid Abbas Alawi ever visit Azad Kashmir because he has mosques over there? No, he did not visit Azad Kashmir, but the people of Kotli, more specifically the Khanqa, the Sufi guides of Kotli, they opened masajid on the name of a Sayyid Abbas Alawi, rahimallahu ta'ala, because they kept good ties with his father, Sayyid Alawi, his brother, Sayyid Muhammad Alawi, and with Sayyid Abbas Alawi, rahimahullah. Someone asks, Shaykh, are there any du'as for getting a job? The answer is yes. Read plenty of La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, non-stop. Someone asks, Assalamu alaikum, can you explain the donkey of a Dajjal? Is it a metaphor for planes? Well, if you had followed my speeches on the end of times, Akhir al-Zaman, and had read my books, you would know that there was a rule, a qa'idah that I mentioned, that the interpretation occurs qat'an, decisively, once the sign comes about. So when the sign will come about, we would know the exact interpretation. And that happened with recording devices. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated that a man will leave the home, and when he will leave the home, his shoe will inform him of what his family had done while he was away. And similarly, when he returns home, his staff, his walking stick, will inform him of what he has done. People who read that in the past may have made multiple interpretations, but now we know the correct interpretation. Someone asks, Sheikh, have you or your publisher considered creating an ebook version of your books, like Navigating the End of Time? Islam Answers Atheism is actually available. Islam Answers Atheism is actually available as an ebook and as a Kindle book. And inshallah, very soon the other books will be also released on those formats. Aqib Khan states magic needs reinterpreting today. It's nonsense. Well, it would be nonsense depending on how you understand sihr. Sihr, magic, is subtle. It's not the type of magic that you think. Some people think it's actual sihr, which means that a sahara, magicians, are able to turn a donkey into a human, for instance. That is not what is meant by actual sihr. Sihr is mainly in the mind. So the sahara are able to carry out acts by which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates within the mind of the victim certain visions or weaknesses. So it's a subtle act. It's not how you visualize it to be. So today's Q&A, before we return back to the Q&A, today's subject was the UK riots. And what I wanted to state with regard to the riots was, before that, there were a few questions that some people have proposed. One is, can I do Raf' al-Yadayn as a Hanafi? I need to know. The answer is no. In the Hanafi school, it's deemed as mansukh, abrogated, based upon the hadith in the Sahih of Imam Muslim and another hadith of Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiyallahu an. Raf' al-Yadayn is deemed as mansukh, abrogated. Someone asks, how often should we complete Al-Quran? The answer is once a month. How do you do that? Recite 2 sides. So if you acquire a Quran, the one juz, which is 10 pages, you recite 2 pages after every salah, which is 4 sides. At the end of the day, you will complete 1 juz of the Quran. In 30 days, you will complete an entire khatma of Al-Quranul Kareem. So what I wanted to mention today was with regard to the UK riots, racism and radicalization in Britain today. Someone had asked me that the claim made with regard to Muslims being groomers in this country, recently we have had the case of Hugh Edwards, a Welsh man, a white Welsh man, not a black Welsh-born individual like the killer in Southport, a white Welsh man, a part of the establishment, someone who was being paid by taxpayers' money, by people who pay the TV license. This is the only country perhaps in the world where you need to pay a tax to have a television. To have a television in the house, you need to pay a tax which is called TV license. We pay TV license, and the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, other people have a nicer name for it, that corporation pays the wages of people like Hugh Edwards, or did pay the wages of people like Hugh Edwards. Previously, the BBC had employed individuals like Rolf Harris and Jimmy Savile, who was a part of the establishment, advisor to the current king. with regard to his marriage with the late Princess Diana. These were people a part of the establishment. But when we had the Rochdale grooming gangs and the Oxford grooming gangs, Pakistani men or Asian men who were convicted, the sentences were passed, and they were convicted according to British law, according to the courts of the land, according to the law of the land. Many of them, their nationalities were revoked, and the law carried out justice for the victims. So that is case closed. But there were people within the establishment who not only carried out criminal acts, they got away scot-free. The likes of the late Edward Heath, the likes of Jeffrey Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of the former owner of the Daily Mirror, Robert Maxwell, who happens to be buried on the Mount of Olives in occupied Palestine, in occupied Jerusalem. Ghislaine Maxwell is now convicted in the United States of America, but we had many cases of establishment, white people carrying out acts of pedophilia, grooming, having illicit materials, explicit materials on their devices. This has been happening for decades in this country. Yet the far right claims that Islam is a danger to this country. Disproportionate claims. Disproportionate claims. So while the riots were occurring in the UK, you had the case of Hugh Edwards. Why was our taxpayer money, and why is our taxpayer money being paid to the BBC? That BBC which harbors the likes of Hugh Edwards. And the BBC which has biased reports on Gaza, biased reports on the coverage in Gaza, biased reports with regard to Birmingham. So many of them gave bad coverage to Birmingham, our home city. So when the Monday gone, young people had gathered to protect a masjid. Why did they gather to protect a masjid? Because in Southport, the masjid was attacked and damaged under a false pretext, under false rumors. And many of these extreme far right, they will never believe Muslims, even when Muslims are speaking the truth. They still hold the conviction that the murderer of those young girls was actually a Muslim, when he is not a Muslim. His name is Axel. They still believe this, that the person is a Muslim. So on that pretext, they attacked the masjid, damaged the masjid, injured many police officers. So the youth of Birmingham, they congregated outside a masjid within one of the areas of Birmingham. The overwhelming youth, they did not riot, they did not attack police. They stood there to protect public property, to protect citizens. And there were white citizens of this country in that protest. They were not just young colored people from all various ethnicities. There were people from various different colored shades of colors that we have in the UK, because we are trophies of the British Empire. That's something that the far right needs to understand. We are here because we are trophies of the British Empire. Britain colonized Africa, Britain colonized India, Britain colonized various parts of the world, and Britain brought back its trophies. We are from those trophies of the British Empire. You need to get over it. We're here to stay. So those riots were actually very peaceful. And if these far right believe that they are actually protecting this country, why did you attack white police officers? Not that it makes a difference whether the police officer is white or black or any other shade in between. Why did you so-called white patriots attack white police officers, harming them, injuring them? Why did you damage public property? Why are you costing the taxpayer if you are so patriotic? Go get an education and join the House of Commons. If you want to be a part of the democratic process, go get an education. An education is free in this country. Go and study, get an education, get a qualification, stand in the local elections and become a part of the House of Commons. Join the democratic process. But instead you are throwing bricks and bottles and harming police officers who are attempting to do their job. So with regard to these riots, the Sky News, I have a message for Sky News. Why do you enter Birmingham City and never interview people who were actually involved in the protests? You park your van on the outskirts of where the protests are happening, and then when your tires are slashed, you leave the city, and you may interview people from all other cities, but you do not interview people who are on the ground here in Birmingham. When it was so safe to enter Birmingham, that you could enter Birmingham, there were people, as I mentioned, from all ethnicities, all backgrounds within the crowd. There was no danger. But you park your van so far away from where the protest was happening, then your tires are slashed and you run away. And then you have the likes of Andrew Tate, an imbecile who doesn't know what is actually occurring on the ground, who comments, who makes a disanalogy between Gaza and England, claiming that there is no difference between Gaza, the occupation in Gaza, and migration in England, when the two things are at disparity. Andrew Tate needs two brain cells to rub together. How can you make an analogy between Gaza and Britain, migration in Britain? Migration in Britain has been occurring for decades. Even David Lloyd George or Arthur Balfour, who wrote the Balfour Declaration in 1917, he had passed in Parliament the Aliens Act some years before. That act was passed against Jewish migration, Jews that were migrating from Russia for protection in the UK. And that is why the state of Israel, or the illegal entity, was actually founded, for NIMBYism, to export Jews from the West to Palestine. The West did not want Jewish people in England. They did not want Jewish people in Europe. So they devised a policy. Zionist Christianity developed a policy to export Europe's Jews and Britain's Jews to Palestine, to create a so-called state which is referred to as the State of Israel. That was the NIMBYism, the policy, because it was a racist policy. And that is why today we find that the far right is carrying Israeli flags. If you are patriots, why are you flying the Israeli flag? What has the Israeli flag to do with patriotism? Because you say to us, or Muslim protesters, that why are they carrying the Palestinian flag? But the question The counter question is, why are you carrying the Israeli flag? Why are you carrying the Israeli flag when you claim to be patriots of the United Kingdom? What has Zionism to do with the far right within Britain? That is the key question. That is what Tommy Robinson needs to be asked. What links does he have with Tel Aviv? And how does Tel Aviv play a role in destabilizing the streets of England? That Tel Aviv has, within the United Kingdom, Tel Aviv has incited the far right to destabilize the streets of the UK, to disunite the citizens of the UK. Similarly, you are carrying Ukrainian flags. If you are anti-immigration, why are you carrying Ukrainian flags? If you are against mass immigration to the United Kingdom, why are you carrying Ukrainian flags? Why are you supporting Ukraine? Because war in Ukraine continues the mass immigration of Ukrainians into the United Kingdom. You should oppose the war in Ukraine. You should oppose NATO's encroachment into Russia. You should call for an end to the war with Russia. You should call for an end to the war in Palestine, a ceasefire in Palestine. Yet you have the far right flying the Israeli and Ukrainian flag. What do Ukraine and Israel have to do with British patriotism? These are essential questions to be asked. So aside from the fact that you ignore Hugh Edwards, you ignore the grooming that occurs within the higher British upper class and ruling class and establishment, you ignore the corruption within higher society, and you attempt to make Muslims the sole reason for illegal immigration or whatever other ills you find within the UK. Additionally, Tommy Robinson, you mentioned that you are not against the Hindus and the Sikhs, but you only target Muslims. You only target Muslims specifically. But I would like to mention that the far right, these extremists, these yubs that lob bricks and stones and throw bottles at mosques, they cannot even differentiate between a gurdwara and a mosque. They would not even be able to read the word gurdwara if it was written on a wall. And Sikh gurdwaras are safer in Muslim majority areas. In Muslim majority areas, you have many Sikh gurdwaras, even though Sikh people may not live in those areas, because those gurdwaras are safe in our areas. Because Muslims do not and should not ever violate the religious building of anyone else, whether it's a Sikh gurdwara or a Hindu temple. Similarly, the churches. There are Muslim majority areas within the UK where we have former Anglican churches, Catholic churches. The buildings are safe, and in fact the buildings may even be protected at times by Muslim citizens. Why? Because the Muslims do not attack the religious buildings of any other faith. So this is why I spoke against masks. Because whenever you have perpetrators doing acts with masks on, you do not know who those masked people are. There may be instances where white far right extremists can carry out acts with a mask on, and then blame other religious groups. This is why when we Muslims protect our mosques, we do not need to wear masks. If we are protecting our mosques, there is honor in defending the mosque. We do not need to wear a mask to do something which is right. When we stand outside public buildings to defend those buildings, we do not need to cover our faces because we are doing something honorable in the first place. So that is also a message, that we do not need to cover our faces when we are actually protecting our mosques. And we will continue protecting our mosques. The far right should not think that the mosques will not be protected. We will protect our mosques in Birmingham, in Bradford, and throughout the United Kingdom. We will stand when necessary to protect the masajid, to protect people. And if the far right believe that they can disunite us, they cannot disunite us in any way or form. Now, someone states, one day these patriotic rioters are going mad about the attack on the police at Manchester airport, but then proceed to disrupt the vigil at Southport and physically attack the police and burn the police vans and disrupted peace in Southport after the demise of the 3 poor little girls. You patriots, so-called patriots, have no heart and you call yourself patriotic. So that is the nature of the radicalization that we have today. But what I would want to say, your so-called patriotic riots, your raiding of Greggs, your ram raiding of various public shops has backfired because it has actually united the people of this country. Inshallah, we will open up for more questions and answers. Someone asks, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What do the prophecies of Sayyidi Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say about the breaking up of the national borders before the re-establishment of the Khilafah? The response is that the hadith mentioned the many civil wars that will actually occur. The civil wars that will occur before that time, which will lead to the disruption of the current borders that we have in those lands. Someone states, discourage cousin marriage, it's lowered our IQ. Well, many of us are not the result of cousin marriage, and I have previously discouraged cousin marriage. In fact, cousin marriage was something discouraged by Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala. When it did occur in the past, it occurred in isolated incidents. But it should not be made the norm. So, like Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, I take the position that we should not encourage cousin marriages. Sheikh, what do you say to J. Dyer, who says Islamic theology is Neoplatonic? The answer is, with regard to this, when Islamic Kalam responded to Greek philosophy, it overlapped in argument. And some of the arguments may overlap. But what is actually logical is not the preserve of Platonist or people, Platonic philosophy. You cannot say that the Islamic theological positions are just Neoplatonic because it overlaps with some of the Platonic philosophy. Someone asks, but didn't Al-Imam Ali radiallahu anh marry Fatima radiallahu anha? Are they not related? As I said to you, Danyal Ali, that it was not the common norm. There were more marriages out of relatives. Cousin marriages did occur, but they were not the absolute norm. But there is a hyper cousin marriage in some segments of the Pakistani community where the number of cousin marriages exceeds the norm or how it should be. Someone asked, Assalamu alaikum, what dalil can I give the Najdiyah for bid'ah hasana? The answer is bid'ah hasana is based upon the fact that there will always be some bid'ah, new acts, which have some basis in the sunnah. And that is actually mentioned, by the hadith in the Sahih of Imam Muslim, Man sanna fil Islami sunnatan hasanatan. Whoever instates in Islam a good practice, falahu ajruha, he shall have its reward. Wa ajru man amila biha, and the reward of those who act according to it. Min ghayri an yanqusa min ujurihim shay, without the reward of those who had instated the practice decreasing. The Salafis, Salih al-Uthaymin states this sunnatan hasanatan refers to the actual sunnah. That is not correct. It refers to a practice which has a basis in the sunnah, and that is the meaning of bid'ah hasana. Anything which has a basis in the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum. Many Pakistani weddings, they do many stuff like hiding the groom's shoe, Quran over the bride's head, etc. How is it to do these traditions? If the tradition has a haram, then the action becomes haram. If it has a makruh tahriman act, then it becomes makruh tahriman. If it is only mubah acts, then it would be permitted. So that is how you judge these type of traditions. Did Al-Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi hold the belief of Ibn Sina that the world is eternal? The answer is no. Al-Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi rahimahullah did not hold the position that the world is eternal. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Hope you are well. What is the reason for not naming, shaming the Sufi cults you warn us against? Would it not be better to warn public so they know exactly who to avoid? The answer is that I have given sufficient guidelines for people to utilize their minds. There are some people who claim that I deny Sufi orders totally, which is false. If your Sufi order does increase you in ibadah and makes you avoid haram and you are not in an actual cult, then that would be fine. A real Sufi group would not become insecure with regard to my criticism because the criticism would not apply to a real Sufi group in the first place. Someone says that a Wahhabi says Palestine and Pakistan. So Shamsi says Palestine and Pakistan are suffering because they are upon shirk, whereas Allah made the Gulf prosper because they are upon Tawheed. How to respond? That's not true because some of the Gulf states are Shia. So according to Shamsi's logic, they should not be prospering. There are some Gulf states that are actually Shia. And then the Palestinians have a higher maqam than these Gulf states. If you are blind to see that, then only Allah can guide you. The Palestinians today have a higher status. They are the cause of the preservation of Al-Aqsa al-Sharif. They are a part of a Ta'ifatul Mansura, the supported group. Someone asked the question, is the Big Bang theory accepted by Muslim scholars as fact in regards to Islamic teaching of astronomy? The answer is no. It's a scientific theory with regard to the state of the universe at point zero. It doesn't entail fact for us. We can study the Big Bang theory for intellectual reasons, but it does not change our creed in any way or form. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Should masjids let the public know where donations are going? Of course they should. Sheikh, do you know of the Jesuit order? Yes, I do. Someone asks the question, can you describe the Birmingham defense protest that you attended? The answer is yes. I attended that protest. The protest was full of young Muslims and non-Muslims who attended in solidarity with the Muslims to defend the masjid in that region, and the environment was friendly. It brought about more unity in the community within Birmingham. The police were friendly. The young men were friendly with the police. There was no negativity, there was no toxicity, and unfortunately the national media gave bad coverage to Birmingham. the media teams, they stood on the periphery. They did not approach the protest or the people attending the protest. They did not approach the community leaders who were in the protest. And they only gave bad press when some incidents occurred after the protest, not at the protest. Someone asks, is it true that Al-Imam Al-Ghazali in his book Al-Munqidh Al-Mankul min Ta'liqat al-Usul, or any, I think the work is Al-Mankhul with the kha, or any of his works discredit or insulted Al-Imam Abu Hanifa concerning his status as a mujtahid? The answer is no. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. What do scholars say about the Hanbali scholar Barbahari? Barbahari, when you read the Tabaqat al-Hanabila and what they state with regard to al-Barbahari, they have many positive things to state. In fact, there's a karama related regarding him, that at the time of his death, there were people surrounding his body with green clothes, who then later disappeared, and the narrator deems them as being angels. Now, the interesting thing is, Salafi publications, when they published Barbahari's creed, which I read in the 90s, the English translation, they actually record that karama, miracle of Barbahari. So the Right Street Salafis, in their edition of Barbahari's creed, they actually have this. I've read his creed, it's Hanbali creed, but there is also interpretation in terms of, if a modern Salafi comments on Barbahari's creed, some of his interpretations may differ if a mainstream Sunni Athari or a Ash'ari commented upon the same creed of Barbahari. Someone asks, Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh, if you commit a sin and repent but continue to do the sin, is the repentance still accepted? The answer is, you still make a resolve of attempting to stop the sin. So even if you sin again, you relapse into the habit of sinning, you make the effort to not sin again. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Can you elaborate on the ahadith mentioning a room? It is interesting that there are hadith mentioning al-Yahud, but here room are mentioned instead of the word for Christians. That is true because a room designates a people, a region and a people, while the word al-Yahud while the word al-Yahud designates a belief system, al-Yahud. So the hadith on a room refers to those people. In the Sahih of Imam Muslim, you have a hadith regarding a room which mentions that a room will place sanctions on al-Iraq. This is mentioned. That sign did not occur until the year 1990 under the rule of Saddam Hussein. So whoever placed sanctions on al-Iraq, those are the people who are referred to as a room in the hadith. While the word al-Yahud refers to a belief system. So it's not essential that the room are necessarily Christians. They could be atheists as well. Someone asks the question, can you tell us about the relationship the police have with the Birmingham Police, West Midlands Police, and why this may have been taken negatively by the media and journalists? The answer is that the journalists were attempting to make Birmingham West Midlands Police look irresponsible, when in reality what the far right media doesn't realize is that Birmingham has a cohesive community where the police work with the communities. So there is no tension between the West Midlands Police Force and the various communities within our city of Birmingham. Therefore, the police did not demonstrate aggression towards the protesters, and the protesters did not demonstrate aggression towards the police. The ethos of the entire protest was friendly towards the police, and the police cooperated and were friendly towards the people of Birmingham. And that is how it is amongst all the communities of Birmingham. Someone asks, do you think it's wrong or right for him to smash Sky News tires as they were leaving Birmingham? Why would anyone condone acts of slashing tires and vandalism, whether it's Sky News or any other Rupert Murdoch outlet, even though Sky News is no longer owned by Rupert Murdoch? I would not condone such actions. You cannot violate any journalist. Journalists are free to investigate. We have a free media, supposedly. So people should have given their interviews and said the correct things to the media outlets. Someone asks, what is the interpretation in Quran where Allah says, be apes to the Jews? See, that address, Kunu qiradatan khasi'in, was an address to a specific group of people. It doesn't refer to the entire Al-Yahud or Bani Israel. It was a specific community of people that done a specific sin in a specific historical event. So what happens today? The Zionist propaganda and the Islamophobe propaganda is to attempt to convince people that the Quran is what they would say anti-Semitic, which it cannot be. The very term anti-Semitic is faulty, because Semitic are the Semitic people are Arabs today. The term Semitic applies to Arabs, but the Quran is referring to a specific group. Someone asks, why don't more UK-based mosques have Islamic libraries? What can we do to fix this? I feel half our problems will be fixed if we read more books. Not necessarily, but the mosques do have libraries. Many mosques within Birmingham have libraries and up and down the country. But even having a library, many people do not read. The better question is, why do people spend more money on takeaways than they spend on books? When it comes to purchasing a book for £10, they become stingy. But when it comes to buying a takeaway or a dessert, they will spend 20, 30, 40 pounds. They will not think twice. But when it comes to purchasing a book for 10 to 15 pounds, they will become stingy. If instead of purchasing a cigarette packet or a takeaway, you purchased a book, at the end of the year you will have 52 books in your library. Imagine every week, once a week you purchased one book, quality book. At the end of the year you will have 52 books and you read one book a week. At the end of the year you will have read 52 books. In 10 years you would have read 520 books. In 20 years you would have read 1040 books. If you did that, if all of us did that, we would not have a lager loud society. We would not have a rioting community. We would have people who are level-headed. So read one book a week. Someone asks, how can a person overcome a stutter? You need to ask a doctor or a psychiatrist. I cannot advise you on that. Someone asks, how will a Dajjal be born if he is alive? The answer is he will not be born, he will appear. Currently as we speak, a Dajjal is in the company of guardian angels who keep him tied. But when his fitna, his tribulation starts, he is released suddenly into the world. Someone asks, Sheikh, do you think this is a good time for Bangladesh and Pakistan to reunite as one country again? I would say yes, of course. They should reunite as Muslims, and this time to diffuse the situation, they should make Arabic the national language, not Urdu, not Bengali, Arabic. It's a good time for Pakistan and Bangladesh to unite. Someone asks the question, Sheikh, what it means if someone sees someone like Trump in a dream, in a gathering, shaking hands with him, and what to do to have purposeful dreams. The answer is it's not wise always to interpret dreams or to always mention dreams. But in a general sense, shaking hands with the leader, whether he's a tyrant or not, a leader represents the leader of a community. Whether it's a tyrant or good is a different matter. To have purposeful dreams, you recite salawat and salam upon the best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in abundance, and you will have purposeful dreams. Who was a Shaykh Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh? Shaykh Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh was a Shaykh from Morocco in Fas, Medina to Fas. He's buried in Bab al-Fattuh, and he passed away very young. The students of Shaykh Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh, rahimahullah, they compiled his statements in a book known as Al-Ibriz. Someone asks, is car finance halal? The answer is no. Car finance would not be permissible. Paying interest-based installments would not be permissible. Someone asks, Sheikh, I had a dream. I was with you in Jannatul Baqi' and you were supervising me while I dug graves. What does this mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Inshallah, it's khair and good. Did a Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani radiallahu an refute the Ash'ari school? Many of the Hanabila did refute the Ash'aris on certain nuanced points. It doesn't mean that they deemed the entire Ash'ari school was misguided. So you may find critical remarks of Hanabila against Ash'aris on certain issues. It doesn't mean that both schools are therefore deviant. How does salawat and salam replace a murabbi shaykh? The answer is, when you cannot find a murabbi shaykh, the salawat and salam upon the best of creation entails that your connection with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is strengthened. Eventually you could be led to a real murabbi shaykh, but there are conditions before even meeting a murabbi shaykh and taking suluk. Those conditions are covered by Shaykh Muhyiddin ibn Arabi rahimallahu ta'ala in a segment of Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah. He has a segment of the preconditions of suluk itself. There are conditions for suluk itself. Sheikh, if car finance isn't allowed, then how come mortgage is allowed? No one said mortgage is allowed. You need to refer back to the fatwa of Dr. Abdul Qadir al Hussein on mortgages. For Bangladesh and Pakistan reunification, do you think Farsi would be a better language as it used to be the lingua franca in subcontinent of Muslims prior to British invasion? The answer is that Farsi is no longer taught in the madaris. Very few schools actually teach and instruct in Farsi. And those who have studied Farsi, like myself, I've studied Farsi with a native Farsi speaker and do not converse in Farsi eloquently enough. So Farsi is less spoken than Arabic. But Arabic being the language of the Quran, and it unites us with over 50 nations, the Muslim nations that can relate to Arabic. So the role of Farsi has decreased in the Biladul Hind, in Bangladesh and Pakistan. Someone asks, with regard to being cautious in regard to certain turuq, tariqas, be cautious of all tariqas, investigate them before you attempt to join them. Someone asks, Shaykh, can you advise on buying first property or renting long term? Again, I would advise you to reference the fatwa of Abdul Qadir al Hussein. He states if the rent is more extortious than the mortgage payments, then you take out one mortgage payment. You do not pay the rent. He has this detailed fatwa on his Arabic channel. Sheikh, what's the difference between Uthmani script and Majidi script? The answer is that do not mix up orthography, which is a rasm. Rasmul Quran is orthography, with khatul Quran. The khat is the calligraphy. So the calligraphy can differ. You have al-khatul Mughali in the Quran that is published in Pakistan and India, and you have al-khatul Ruqa'i, which is the khat that is published in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, and then the Moroccans have their own khat. So there is a distinction between khat, which is the calligraphy, and Rasmul Quran, which is the orthography, which is actually the spelling dictates of the Quran. Someone asks, in all honesty, have you experienced any racism in the UK at any time? I would have to say never in the recent years. Perhaps in childhood, a few odd experiences, but not in recent years. Someone asks, how do you deal with a child that continues misbehaving? The answer is that you recite the adhan in the right ear. You do the adhan in the right ear, Allahu Akbar, and do the adhan, and then do the iqama in the left ear. The iqama, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Insha'Allah, that child will obey you and behave. Someone asks, Sheikh, what was the creed of a Daraqutni? The creed of a Daraqutni was the creed of the Salaf, as-Salafu Salihun. And that creed is the creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Someone asks, Salam Shaykh, did Allah Hazrat hold the view the earth is flat? The answer is no. The answer is he did not believe that the earth is flat. Before continuing the questions and answers, and we will finish this live stream very shortly, I would want to mention a few things and then we will return to the questions and answers and then finish the live stream. With regard to institutional racism, that there are incidents that occur within the UK in workplaces that sometimes people may face institutional racism, and at other times there may be some people who grossly exaggerate racism. Both things occur. For instance, if someone performs their job badly and the person in charge of the workplace takes strong action against them for having bad conduct and poor ability in the workplace, the race card should not be falsely utilized. But at the same time, there may be very true incidents of racial prejudice, of racial bias that do occur in the workplace. And then there is also the difficulty that some people face in integration, cooperation, and even discussion with people from another race. These are very real issues that occur within the UK and other places of the world. We must overcome the racial barriers by having self-confidence in our religious beliefs, in our political positions, and feel comfortable in our own skins. That is how we overcome institutional racism, by having that confidence. Also, another issue to be pointed out is that the so-called patriots claim that we, the Muslims, are here to radicalize young people against this country. That is the claim of the far right, when it is utterly false. Because remember one thing, we, the Muslim community, did not select Hamza Huk, Umar Bakri, and others as our leaders. Hamza Huk in the 90s was deported, the man with the two hooks as hands. Similarly, other people like Umar Bakri, we Muslims did not elect those individuals to represent us. We did not elect Anjum Chaudhry to represent us. Yet those people, Hamza Huk, Umar Bakri, Anjum Chaudhry, they were platformed on Newsnight, on BBC, the same BBC that protected Jimmy Savile for years, the same BBC that protected Hugh Edwards and others. They platformed the likes of Hamza Huk, Anjum Chaudhry, Umar Bakri, giving the impression to the working people of this country, to the white people of this country, including the underbelly, including the Lagalouts, the idea that Muslims have these type of people as leaders. We did not select them as leaders. Similarly, the white people of this country, or many of the white people of this country, did not select Nick Griffin or Tommy Robinson as their leaders. Yet they are platformed by mainstream news outlets, media outlets, by corporate media. They are platformed by the corporate media and are even given a stage to speak at the Oxford Union. A shame on the Oxford Union that you have the likes of Tommy Robinson speaking at your platform, and yet you do not have real representation of those people who actually represent people on the ground. So we, the Muslims, did not choose Hamza Huk or Umar Bakri as our leaders, and many of the white people did not choose Tommy Robinson as their leader. But the question needs to be asked, that Sky News now that complains about its tires being slashed, complains about not being able to enter the city of Birmingham, why did you platform the wrong leaders in the first place? And there is no conspiracy to radicalize the young people. Additionally, some of these bots that appear in the comment sections of many videos, they claim that we Muslims have a different message or we are lying. This is reflection. This is what the Zionists do. The Zionists in their Talmud, the teachings in the Talmud, have insults to Jesus, have laws relating to non-Jews, which are laws which the chief rabbi of Britain will never read out on national radio or television. Laws relating to the Gentiles. We Muslims do not preach those laws that are found in the Talmud. Yet the Zionists reflect on a regular basis those teachings of the Talmud upon the Muslims, claiming that the Muslims do that. And I have noticed a similar rhetoric amongst the right wing, that the right wing make the same claims as the Zionists. That is, that the Muslims are prone to violence and killing and maiming and raping. But in reality, that is exactly what the IDF is doing. Everything we observe today. There was false news that on October 7th, young children were killed. False news. That false news spread to the point that the president of the most powerful nation on earth, the United States of America, Joe Biden, was spewing out that false news, that babies were decapitated, which is false news. False news that people were raped, systematically raped on October the 7th. False news. That false news led to the landlord of a Palestinian child to kill a Palestinian child in the United States. A landlord killed his tenant, a child, a 6-year-old child, Palestinian child, based upon false news. So the way the Zionists spewed out false news with regard to the Palestinians and Islam, whatever they claim with regard to Islam, it is found in the Talmud and the IDF. They will say the Muslims kill children, but you will find that in the Talmud, not in the Quran. They will claim, and you will see the IDF carrying out killings of children. They will claim that the Quran has rape, but you do not find that in the Quran, you find it in the Talmud. It is the IDF who are advocating rape of prisoners today. It is the Knesset that is advocating the rape of prisoners today. And then you will find child killing in the Talmud, but you will not find it in the Quran. Yet they claim it is the Muslims. And the right wing, some of these underbelly, the English underbelly, they adopt similar type of views. They take those views and they reflect that on the Muslim community. So that is an essential message for today, an essential component of the message for today. Inshallah, we will open up for questions and answers. Someone asks for the link for the fatwa of Dr. Abdul Qadir Al Hussein on mortgages. Inshallah, we will place the link in the comment section at the end of this live stream. Someone asks, Sheikh, do the majority of the ulama permit the daf? Can you name a few? There is ikhtilaf in the Hanafi school amongst the Ahnaf regarding daf and the ruling on daf. But overall it would be permitted. I would not say that it's a majority or a minority. Someone asks, Sheikh, if you could meet any Sahabi, who would it be? I would meet Abu Ubaidah bin al-Jarrah radiyallahu anhu. Someone asks, are Palestinians Sufi? The Palestinians are 99% Shafi'i, and they follow the Shafi'i school, and there are Sufis amongst the Palestinians. Ismail Haniya's father was a Sufi Sheikh. a leader of one of the Sufi turuq. Someone asks, did Allah Hazrat believe the earth is stationary? The answer is yes. He held the view that the earth is stationary. Many ulama did, and some ulama still hold that position. For instance, ulama in Mauritania. But the ulama who held that position, they wrote works on that, but they didn't believe the earth is flat. So he didn't hold the position that the earth is flat. Sheikh, what are your views on those who cut the words of scholars to change meanings to suit their deviant views? That would be impermissible. Sheikh, is sketching, drawing living things permissible? It would be permissible, but you avoid drawing the eyes, for instance. What do you think of people who become vegans for moral issues or for Islamic reasons, such as it being hard to find halal meat? The latter would be permissible. But being a vegan for moral issues depends on the nature. For instance, if they avoid battery chickens due to the way chickens are farmed, that is different. If they avoid organic chickens, they would not be permitted to avoid meat which is ethically raised and reared and ethically slaughtered. They cannot avoid that meat based upon what they say is an ethical reason. They must do it for health reasons or to cut down meat to decrease desires, for instance. Sheikh, do you think it is now high time for every Muslim community and their masjids to invest in training the people in MMA and grappling for self-defense? Many communities have started years ago. The answer is yes. The youth must learn grappling, MMA, boxing, avoid shots to the face and the head while training. You can practice on a bag, on a dummy. You can practice with each other with body shots, that's permitted, but not striking the head and the face. But everyone should learn self-defense. Self-defense is important. Someone asks, is it allowed to work in investment banking within a division that does not directly deal with riba? Because I do work in asset management, managing sovereign funds for Muslim countries. That would be permitted if you are not dealing with riba. What is the ruling on hanging pictures of my sheikh on the wall? Is this permitted? The answer is it would be permitted. In the Maliki school, for instance, they permit pictures that are from the halfway of the chest. In the Maliki school, they permit this. You cannot have the picture in the direction of your salah. So do not have the picture in the direction of your salah. You have the picture behind you or in an area where people do not pray salah. But you do not hang these type of pictures outside of graves or where people will give wrong veneration to the pictures. So in a room, if you have pictures of your mashayikh, it would be permissible. In the Maliki school, this fatwa is found in the Fatawa of Sayyid Alawi, rahimallahu ta'ala. Does laughing in salah break my wudu? The answer is yes. In the Hanafi school, laughing laughing in the salah would break your wudu and your salah. Do you have any strong words for the Qadianis who seem to have disappeared as you predicted? Qadianis, I am waiting for your email. Send your email. I am waiting for your email. I have been I have emailed them back and I am waiting for them to email back. So I have been checking the email and they have not sent any email for the conditions of the debate. They will debate, the debate will happen. Watch this space. Someone asks, was Ibn Qudamah rahimallahu ta'ala harsh against Ash'aris? The answer is yes. Some of the Hanabila refuted Ash'ari positions, but they did not deem them as Ahlul Bid'ah. They may have deemed certain positions of certain Ash'ira as wrong and mistaken, and they did condemn those positions. How does Allah not have a hand if it is written in the Quran? In the Quran, the word is yad, it's not the word hand. Sheikh, would the niqab be wajib in Germany, for example, because people claim we live in times of fitna? The answer is no, it would not be wajib. Guide on learning Arabic for speaking and understanding. To speak and understand Arabic, you need to converse. So there are many people, they attend Arabic courses, but they act like mutes. They do not speak. They become mutes. You need to have confidence and speak and converse. Sheikh, what have scholars said about Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab? What the scholars did say about Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab was that he was a Khariji. Him and his followers were Khawarij. This is stated by Ibn Abdin in his Hashia, Ahmad al-Sawi in his commentary of the Quran. These were contemporaries to the time of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab or just after him. And they mentioned him as being a Khariji and his followers, his atba' as being Khawarij. Why did the Islamic world allow alcohol during the Khilafah? In the Khilafah, the Christians are permitted to trade in alcohol. So they are not barred from alcohol. They can trade in alcohol. They are permitted to trade in alcohol in the Christian areas, Jewish areas, non-Muslim areas. So there is an actual alcohol trade within an Islamic caliphate, but within the non-Muslim communities. Someone asks, what is the ruling on those who attend pride marches or support pride movements, including flags and wearing pride lanyards, believing it's fine? That is impermissible in Islam, and the person who believes LGBTQ is fine. He leaves the fold of Islam. There's a choice between the two. They are at disparity. I would refer you to my interview with Declan Henry, which is available on the channel. Someone asked, but why did Muslim leaders and normal people drink alcohol as if it was normal? Because they were sinful. So they carried out a sin. So if those Muslims drank alcohol in the caliphate, it would just be deemed as a sin. It doesn't mean in terms of constitutionally, it was permitted in the Islamic caliphate. What does yad mean if it doesn't mean hand? Yad means yad. It means that without making any resemblance of Allah to creation. Someone asks, can sins take you out of Islam? The answer is no. Sins do not make you a non-Muslim, but sins are a warning that we must avoid sinning so it does not eventually lead us to kufr. Someone asks, why did Shaykh Al-Buti rahimahullah deem istighatha to be haram? Is this a valid opinion? He didn't hold the position that it is haram. He spoke on the adab of istighatha, and this is something which Shaykh Zahid Al-Kawthari rahimahullah also mentions in his monograph Mahkut Taqawul, that the public should be taught on the correct manners of tawassul and istighatha. Assalamu alaikum Shaykh, do you recommend shortening the Dars-e-Nizami course in relevance to present day? If yes, what books within the syllabus do you recommend studying or teaching? I do not recommend the shortening of the course. In fact, the short course should be extended. Here at SBC, we have included all the books of Mantiq now and all the books of Ilm al-Kalam. All the books of Mantiq have been added and the course has been extended. Would laughing while in wudu break your wudu? The answer is no. Laughing in salah would violate your salah. Someone asks, is it permitted to recite qasida of madad of Sufi chains to receive barakah and spiritual support? The answer is yes, it would be permitted, because the arwah, the souls, do not, when they leave, depart from this world, the souls are in barzakh, the souls can still be connected. There is a spiritual connection, the soul with the soul. This can happen in the dream world, it can happen in this realm. Therefore, that would be permissible. Inshallah, we will be concluding now in 5 minutes. So, place your questions for the next 5 minutes before we conclude. Shaykh, is there a valid difference of opinion on tawassul being permissible? The answer is no. Tawassul is permitted in all 4 madhabs, in al-madhahib al-arba'a, through the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Shaykh, if I work in a pharmacy, do I get thawab, reward for helping patients? Yes, you do. Al-a'malu bin niyat. Shaykh, Arabic online course, the answer is I do not teach online. Is it halal to donate an organ, and what conditions? This is disputed amongst the ulama. Why did Shaykh Muhammad Ali al-Sabuni rahimahullah criticize Shaykh al-Buti rahimahullah on the Syrian revolution? Shaykh Sabuni rahimahullah took a different stance. Even though prior to that he had praised Shaykh al-Buti for his works. Both of them passed away. May Allah have mercy on their souls. If Eid al-Adha falls on 2 days, do you have to keep 2 fasts for the 9th of Dhul Hijjah? You do it according to your locality, your local sighting, when the 9th Dhul Hijjah falls in your locality. Can children also be affected by waswasa from shaitan? Yes, they can. Recite upon them Surah Al-Fatiha, Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas. Can you do a live on the AICP Ahbash sect? They are causing fitna. I believe your local ulama should deal with them, because they are not that big here or other areas. I believe they are not as effective or influential as is made out to be. If they are causing fitna in your area, then have the local ulama deal with them. Are string instruments not permissible due to the association with haram? And could one hold an opinion that some particular string instruments is halal if it is not associated with haram? This is disputed amongst the fuqaha, but the safest position would be not to listen to string instruments. Was Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah a mujassim like Shaykh Sa'id for the claims? Answer is no, he was not a mujassim. Did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam see Allah? It was disputed amongst the Sahaba. Ibn Abbas took the positive view, while Aisha radiallahu anha took the other view. So, concluding today's live stream, I would give some warm and positive words for both Muslims and non-Muslims, that there is an interest in the deen of al-Islam. My message to all the Tullabul Ilm and the advanced students of knowledge: this is a perfect opportunity for you to give da'wah to non-Muslims, to preach Islam correctly, to instruct people with regard to the correct teachings of al-Islam. This is a ripe opportunity, and we must take advantage of this time and opportunity and have a reach out to all the non-Muslims of this country. Take that message for today, and I will be seeing you soon, inshaAllah ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.